Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Tee 'em Up podcast. I'm Jace Eustace, joined as always by my co-host, Jared Huff. And Jared, so you got your Bulls jersey on, man. How you doing this week?
Well, this Bulls jersey is about all the happiness I've had this week. Other than my NBA fandom, it's been a good week. Finally got the elusive PS5 and two Bulls jerseys that I ordered last month came in. Got this it's very nice Caruso
Oh, there you go.
going on. And then
oh, you had it ready to go. We did not even plan that. You had that ready to go.
Zach LaVine too. So it's been good. But then when it comes to my actual Chicago Bulls, it's been a rough week. It's been the roughest week all season. It hasn't been easy. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit, but yeah,
definitely. It hasn't been the easiest week. You guys still holding down the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. And speaking of
shocked.
Yeah. Speaking of Zach LaVine, that's kind of where we want to start things. We want to run through. So it's been a pretty crazy season so far among the NBA. Most of the teams having to deal with some sort of COVID outbreak or two at this point. It's been kind of hard to keep track of which stars will be playing each game, but most of the Eastern Conference top teams have had a little more to worry about recently about some scary injuries to some of their top guys. So we just kind of wanted to start there at the top with the Chicago Bulls. And Zach LaVine injured his left knee during the Bulls' 138-96 loss to the Golden State Warriors just the other day. LaVine reportedly had an MRI on Saturday that showed no structural damage. He'll be reevaluated next week. So, Jarrett, as a resident Bulls fan, what was your reaction to this news when you found out there's no structural damage? And how does that help your team hold on to that first place seed?
Well, it was a breath of fresh air. I'm not going to lie to you. I was sick to my stomach watching the rest of that game because like 4 minutes of the game, Zach LaVine disappears. Like there was no like stoppage of play. He wasn't like on the ground in pain. He just like disappeared in the locker room. One of my buddies was at the game and he was confused too. Like no one knew what was going on. Hardly anyone in the media. And then it's just announced, oh, Zach LaVine has a knee injury. And the guy's torn his ACL before. And there have been significant knee injuries where people can simply walk off and it's way worse than what it really is or what it seems like. In comparison to say when Derrick Rose tore his ACL and he was on the ground in pain, like it can either way, it can be awful. Yeah. So when we saw there's no structural damage and it's like he's going to be reevaluated in a week, that's like the best case scenario for this team, especially I believe we're on a 4-game losing streak with back-to-back losses against the Warriors and Nets that were really bad. And then a 2-point loss to the Celtics last night. It's been a rough go of things.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to knee injuries, it's always scary to see because you never really know what happens in there. We know a lot of times with basketball players, you always get scared when you hear the ACL, the MCL, all those type of, muscles in that knee that could possibly snap at any moment, especially in a game where you rely so much on your athleticism, your bounce, especially with Zach LaVine. He's a great shooter as well, but he likes to play above the rim. And you always worry about with players like him that's so explosive that sometimes it can be damaging on their body. I don't have to tell you, obviously, with Derrick Rose, how it can be explosive on their bodies and can really hurt them. But this was great to see. No one wants to see any sort of injuries, man. Everybody, even opposing teams will just say they want to go against the other team's top guys. No one wants to see anybody go down. NBA is such a brotherhood kind of type of league. And I was really glad to see that Zach LaVine, this was something that hopefully won't linger for the rest of the season. It should be something to just give him some time off, let him heal up a little bit. No structural damage is obviously great to see. And I think Zach LaVine will be back and hopefully just be picking up right where he left off, which was right on the fringe of MVP type caliber player for the first place Chicago Bulls. So moving on now to the second place team, which is the Brooklyn Nets. And it was announced that just this morning that their star Kevin Durant has suffered an MCL sprain in his left knee. Speaking of knee injuries, according to Woj, this could have the MVP candidate sidelined for 4 to 6 weeks. So Jared, what does this mean if I'm a Nets fan? Is the sky falling? What's going on here?
Well, no, the sky's not completely falling just yet because this means that Kevin Durant will be returning this season and it won't be too long from now. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks seems like a long time, but he'll be back probably around the All-Star break, maybe a little bit after that and ready to play. And the Nets should still be in a pretty good position. I mean, they still have James Harden. And when Kevin Durant was out with COVID, Harden kept the Nets afloat. Now you have Kyrie Irving back for some road games. That should also help. So it's not completely like a bad time for the Nets right now. I mean, the Heat and 76ers are rising, so they may lose a couple spots. The Bulls may sink with them for all we know, too. But it's not the end of the world. Honestly, I was really worried for KD, the way he just hopped out of the game and it was just announced he had a knee injury. Whenever you hear a knee injury, my mind always
It's
goes to
scary,
like a
man.
worst case scenario. And I've been conditioned for that. I've
Yeah.
seen so many of my favorite players uh, tear ACLs, tear MCLs, you name it, honestly. So this is honestly, if anything, it's good that Kevin Durant should be back and to full strength after a little rehab in the 4 to 6 weeks. So thankful for that.
Yeah, and KD's another one of those guys who's had injuries like that in the past too. So you always worry about him re-injuring those knees. And KD's not a guy that really relies too much on his explosiveness, but still, any type of injury like that, you always wonder when they come back what they're going to be. So it's, but to me, this injury is a little bit scary if I'm a Nets fan, because KD to me was just carrying the weight of the franchise, solely on his back. To this point, we've seen a few games with Kyrie, and we've seen him come back and contribute. And everybody knows Kyrie is just a bucket. It's what he is. We know that Harden hasn't been the player he once was since we've kind of seen the rule changes. I know he's started to get going, starting to get to the free throw line a little bit more than he was at the beginning of the season. But there's a possibility, and there is a possibility that, in his absence, that Harden could somewhat return kind of to what his MVP form was. Kyrie can contribute what he can on road games because he still refuses to get vaccinated. But it's scary for this team as far as the Eastern Conference standings go. I mean, currently, they sit in second place, which is a great position for them to be in. But just with how tight the Eastern Conference is, they're just 2 games away from the 6th-seeded Cavaliers. The Cavaliers are in the 6th seed, and they're 1 win away from the Brooklyn Nets. That just shows how tight things are at the top of the Eastern Conference. I think it's very fair to expect them to see them struggle over this next month with KD out. I think the Bucks, 76ers, the Cavs, all the Hornets, they're all going to see kind of an opportunity to move up in the conference, get some wins, kind of solidify themselves as high up as they possibly can in the Eastern Conference standings. And if I'm a Nets fan, I'm starting to really worry a little bit about this team just because of the uncertainty of Kyrie Irving. You can't have him for home games. So now all of a sudden you're playing a home game in Barclays and one of these teams comes in, like even a Hornets who we see they can be great on any given night. The Cavaliers, the Bucks are just going to feast on them going into Barclays. It's going to be scary for home games when it's just Kyrie and just a bunch of aging bench players. So I'm a little scared if I'm a Nets player or if I'm a Nets fan. I think it's very fair to see them drop towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference by the time he gets back.
I also have one more thing to add on this. With Kevin Durant going out for this extended period of time, do you think that he still has a chance in the MVP conversation? Because I think this kind of sinks that ship. I mean, there's no one really breaking away.
It's a tough one. And we have a segment a little bit later where we'll go into a little bit more detail. I think it's hard to miss a month. And even if you talk about six weeks, more of a month and a half of basketball in the middle of the season. And especially now we'll be talking down the stretch. We'll be talking, past the All-Star break, around the All-Star break, where games really start to matter. I think, unfortunately, it does really hurt Kevin Durant's MVP conversation, even though his numbers are up there. No one can deny with that. I just think to be an MVP, you have to be available. You got to be there to help your team. And I think even if his team does good, I think it might hurt him a little bit too, because it might show they might not need him as much as we think. But also, I just think they're going to drop a little bit, and it might be hard for him to catch up once he gets back.
I think Kevin Durant, legacy-wise, could potentially join that conversation with Kobe and Shaq for players that only won MVP, only won it once. Wow, I can't talk today.
Yeah.
And then we're going to look, and we're going to be like, how the hell did Kevin Durant only win one MVP? I think he's going to join that conversation potentially.
See, and people think because I'm such a fan of LeBron that I hate on KD, and that's really not the case. I think KD is a fantastic player, and I would just absolutely hate to see injuries become part of his story, because we're kind of bordering on that. Obviously he's had a few big injuries. He's had to sit out a few years, and you'd hate to see injury really become part of, oh, well, Kevin Durant could have been so much better. You hate to see wasted potential. I don't think we're in that kind of area yet, especially with just an MCL sprain, but you would just hate to see things start to snowball, as we were kind of worried there. LeBron stayed so healthy, his entire career. And then there was over the last couple of years, we've seen a couple just nagging injuries where we were wondering if that was going to start to snowball. So I would hate to see that become part of KD's story, and hopefully it won't, but I'm definitely a little worried if I'm waking up today as a Nets fan. But Lastly, on the injury front, I kind of want to move on to the third team in the Eastern Conference. That's my Miami Heat, and their star center Bam Adebayo has been out for 6 weeks. He's already been out since having surgery on his right thumb back in early December. That being said, all signs are now officially pointing to a Monday return for the All-Star. So, Jarrett, what does this mean for Miami moving forward if they get their big man back?
Well, this is great for Miami. They put themselves in a great position in the standings right now. They're last time I checked, I think after last night's loss to the Sixers, they are third.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. But they're 7-3 over their last 10 games, and they've just been on a roll. And it's like next man up is the mentality for this team. I mean, Doc Rivers put it best the other night. He's like, I don't know where the hell they find these guys. This team is resilient. A lot of players like Max Strauss, one of the Martin twins.
Yeah.
How do you say that?
Omer Yurtseven.
Omer Yurtseven. Okay, I think I can remember that. Like all these guys are stepping up, and it's put this team in a great position, especially unfortunately for the Bulls and Nets with top players and key players going down. And Bam coming back, Butler finally starting to get healthy.
Yeah.
And the rest of the roster coming together. They're in a great position to maybe take hold of this lead in the Eastern Conference and potentially even put distance between them and the pack.
Yeah, and there's some key guys we still haven't even seen so far this season. I mean, we haven't seen Markieff Morris ever since that interaction he had with Nikola Jokic. He's been out literally every game since then. We haven't seen people forget, but Victor Oladipo is still sitting on this bench waiting for him to get healthy. Maybe he could be a contributor down the stretch. You never know what you're going to get from him, but this could be huge for Miami, man. They've performed beyond my expectations with Bam and Butler's injuries. Definitely surprised a lot of teams around the league currently holding down that 3 seed. But Bam, he's a legitimate all-star in this league. He's not only a great rebounder, he's a great passer for his size. They use that to their advantage a lot. He's continuing to work on his outside touch. He's really trying to become a threat in all aspects of the game. It'll be interesting to me to see how Coach Spo kind of handles his return, because we've seen some great play early on in his absence from Dwayne Dedmon, and more recently, obviously, of rookie Omer Yurtseven in his spot. I think Yurtseven has really earned some playing time in that rotation behind Adebayo when he comes back, as he's shown to Spo and the rest of the guys on this roster have really shown to Spo what he has on his bench. And we know that when you get into tough playoff series down the stretch, that the depth and the tenacity of your bench can really be the difference between going home and moving on. I think they've really a lot of teams, especially in the Eastern Conference, have kind of put a little, red flag on Miami as a team to look out for just because of the bench that they have. And I don't think even I thought this bench is going to be as good as it has. I was really worried with all these injuries and COVID outbreaks that they had that they were going to fall in the standings, and they've continued to climb. So it's been great to see from a Miami Heat fan standpoint. And I know it's great to have Bam Adebayo back. He's one of the best young and up and coming players still in this league. And I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. But so there was something this week, moving on in a clean transition here. There was something this week that we didn't really expect to see. There was a trade between two Eastern Conference teams, and it was a Cam Reddish being sent from the Atlanta Hawks to the New York Knicks for Kevin Knox and a first-round pick. So, Jared, we don't usually see trades like this that have an impact kind of this early on. We're still a little bit early as far as that goes, but what does this mean for these teams and Reddish moving forward?
Well, I think this is the perfect scenario for Reddish. The Hawks obviously have had big problems this year, especially defensively. And I think it also comes down to a case of they have too many guys. They have too many guys that are worth playing, and they just can't play everybody. Now, Cam Reddish always seemed to be on the outside looking in terms of being part of that core moving forward. I mean, trade talks go back as far as I believe his rookie year.
Yeah.
So now in his third year, he's a very young player. He's shown massive signs of improvement this season, especially in scoring. I think he had a couple career highs this season already. One I think was against my Chicago Bulls. He's a good player, and he goes to a Knicks team that is actually coming back from the depths of the Eastern Conference where they found themselves midway through this season. I believe they're 7-3 over their last 10. And he's only going to be an asset to this team. I'm really excited to see what the Knicks do with him. I'm really excited to see where Tom Thibodeau puts him in the system going forward. And it's great. And he's reunited with his teammate, RJ Barrett. So it's good to see. Maybe the Knicks will find a way to bring Zion and reunite the Duke's big three.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd love to, but I really like this trade for the Knicks. Reddish, you touched on it, is still a very young player in this league, and he's had games in the past where he just kind of explodes, for 30 points and just kind of goes off and looks like a true up and coming star. The big key for him to me is just consistency and finding his role within a team. I completely agree with you that in Atlanta, it just seemed like he was kind of the odd man out. There was a lot of guys that just deserved playing time, and he deserved playing time as well. But just that kind of rotation hasn't fit this year for Atlanta. And I think they kind of realized that they have to not clean house, but kind of give someone, get him out of the building, not because he's a problem, but just because they don't have what it takes right now for him to develop into a star player. And they wanted to bring in Kevin Knox, and obviously a first round pick, where they think can help them in the future. But the Knicks, I think he's now on a team that really wants him. They went out and they got him, and they think that he obviously has the talent to continue to step forward in this league and become a key guy for him. I wrote down as well, I love pairing him with his old college teammate in RJ Barrett, who's kind of in the same boat as Reddish. We've seen just kind of flashes of stardom in these guys. It's just been consistency. We haven't really seen them take that next step forward. I don't think the Knicks were really getting too much from Kevin Knox, and they're kind of hoping that they could look back on this trade years from now and say Reddish steps forward, and they can just say, hey, we stole Cameron Reddish, from the Atlanta Hawks, and he developed into a star. I know obviously that's what they're hoping, and a lot of Knicks fans out there are hoping. So to me, it's a better opportunity for them. He's going to get better playing time, a more consistent role. He's going to play with a proven coach in Tom Thibodeau, and we'll see kind of where that goes from there. But it's definitely something I'm interested in watching. And, I'd be interested to see I believe he's kind of dealing with a little bit of an injury right now. So I don't think he's played yet for the Knicks, but when he kind of gets back and gets rolling into that team, I'll be interested to see where kind of his ceiling rises to. I don't know about you, but it's kind of the way that I look at it. So we've talked a lot so far this podcast about the Eastern Conference, but we got to shoot on over to the Western Conference, man. We got to touch a little bit on the Memphis Grizzlies, and they just recently snapped a 10-game winning streak and currently sit at the 3rd seed in the Western Conference behind Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns. So John Morant's balling. Taylor Jenkins looks like the head coach of the future. And Jared, what has gone right for Memphis so far this season?
Well, what's gone right is kind of like in the case of Miami, players stepping up. I mean, Desmond Bane is inserting himself into among the best shooting guards in the league, in my opinion. He's been a great number 2 offensively with John Morant. Like, that is a sneaky good backcourt. That's a backcourt you weren't expecting to be on your list of top backcourts in the league this season. And they're up there for sure. Team chemistry is another big thing. I hear that's talked about constantly with this team. I just saw an article today where Taylor Jenkins got the team to play dodgeball during training camp to build chemistry, which come to think of it, that's genius. It's a young team, bunch of young guys, and who doesn't want to play dodgeball? I love playing dodgeball in gym class. Like, that was the best day if basketball wasn't an option. I was playing dodgeball. That's awesome. It seems like it seems like he knows how to build up this young team. And it's been a pleasant surprise to watch, especially out West, where we were thinking the West wouldn't be as good this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of us all kind of looked at Memphis kind of the same before this year. We kind of saw them as a young team. They're very talented. They have an unproven head coach, but they kind of had the talent to compete for kind of that bottom of that Western Conference. I think most of us saw them as kind of a 7-8 play-in type of team, not the bottom feeders in the Western Conference, but we were all wrong. I mean, and I'll say it, this team is a legitimate contender. This team looks fantastic. They play so hard, and that's what I love. John Morant, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark, all these guys aren't necessarily the guys that are going out there and putting up 25 to 30 points a night, but they have so many solid 15-point scorers that also play in the defensive end that it is a team you do not want to match up against in a first round of a playoff series. And these guys look like they love playing together. You could just see it on the court. They support one another. They want to see the other guys on the court with them succeed. There's no sort of jealousy that you see. There's a little bit kind of when a lot of fans were kind of booing John Morant when he came back because the team was doing so well without him, came back and lost a few games when he came back. His team rallied around him. They know he's kind of the leader of that squad, even as young as he is. This experiment with Taylor Jenkins as the head coach so far is getting an A+. It's passing with flying colors. Memphis has size, they have skill, they have shooting, they can hang with these top teams in the league. And the most recent run has really just kind of put the Western Conference and the league on notice. And I just think we need to watch out for the Grizzlies because this could only just be the beginning. I mean, depending on how far they go, say they get a tough matchup in round one and they get knocked out, it's definitely not the end of them. They are very young. They are very hungry. And this is a team to be scared of in that Western Conference. And I can't believe we're saying about the Memphis Grizzlies. I can't believe it. I never thought we'd be sitting here talking about the Memphis Grizzlies, but it's been great to see, man.
Yeah, who knew you didn't need a Gasol brother to be a good Grizzlies team?
Yeah, who knew? Shout out to Powell and Mark, but man, it's been great to see. They have a good mix of some older guys on that team that are just kind of leading. They're putting their faith in John Morant, and he's coming through with MVP type numbers. And God, I don't know, John Morant, it's just watching him reminds me just so much of young Derrick Rose. It's so weird to say. His play style is just, it's so exciting to watch. He's just so young. He plays above the rim. Some of the blocks, the highlights that he's putting up to that you see almost every night. I know against the Lakers, he had an absolute highlight reel, just multiple blocks on the defensive end. But man, it's fantastic to see. And I think it's only the beginning.
Yeah, it's just with John Morant's play, it definitely shows that Derrick Rose definitely had an impact on this generation of basketball players, and probably Russell Westbrook too. So it's kind of nice to see that live on, and hopefully John Morant does great things with his career and with this Grizzlies franchise going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just going to use that transition over here to a franchise that I believe has not been doing so well as of late. So
I can't wait.
For me, Jared, this has been a long time coming. I just want to declare it one more time. And I know a lot of people out there are going to get angry at me, but it's time to start over for the Boston Celtics. It's not working, and no one wants to listen to me. I called this before the season. This roster is not built to compete in the NBA or even in the Eastern Conference. I was right. They're a mediocre team with ill-fitting talent that convinces themselves every year that they are a title contender. So I thought I'd put together kind of my plan to fix the Boston Celtics. And this is my gift to the Boston Celtics fans, even though they're probably going to hate it. I am the furthest thing from a Celtics fan, but this is my gift if you guys want to contend.
All right, let's hear GM Jace.
GM Jace, if I take over for the Boston Celtics, the first thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to trade Jaylen Brown and Al Horford to the Pacers for Domantas Sabonis and Karis LeVert. That's the first place that I'm going to. I know a lot of people are going to be mad trading Jaylen Brown. I get it. He's a great talent. He could put up numbers, but he's not on this roster a winning basketball player with him and Jason Tatum. And if I have to pick Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, I'm going with Jason Tatum. Then I try to send out Marcus Smart and Josh Richardson and maybe a pick or two. And I try my hardest, I don't know if I can, to try to pry away Miles Bridges from the Hornets or Tobias Harris from the 76ers. 76ers are probably a little bit more reasonable. I know they want to try to get rid of that contract that Tobias Harris is on. If I could pick one of the two, I'm going with Miles Bridges of the Hornets, but it's going to be tough to kind of prime away with the way that he's kind of rising. So I completely understand that. Then I try to package whatever I have left as far as Schroeder, Williams, Cantor, a pick or two or whatever, and I go and I get Jeremy Grant from the Detroit Pistons. And I know some people out there are going to say, Jace, what are you doing? You're just going with a bunch of wing players. You're getting rid of all this depth. I get that. This is, to me, it is a wing-dominated league right now. And I know we could say that it's a backcourt, it's a guard-dominated league, and I get that there's guards that are out there. But to me, if I'm trying to build a roster, I want great wing players that can handle the basketball. That's how I know I can win games. So this kind of leaves me with a Jason Tatum, Sabonis, Bridges, or Harris, and a Grant as kind of my core. Then I'm kind of looking at free agency to pick up some solid veteran point guards and big men to try to fulfill that. I don't know how the money's going to add up, but John Wall could possibly be a free agent after this year if he decides to opt out of his player contract, which could be weird because he is owed $40 million and it's hard to pass up $40 million. But if he gets to the point where he's like, hey, I want to play basketball, he might just do that. Patrick Beverly could be a free agent after this year, Patty Mills. And in bigs, I'm looking at, Tristan Thompson, JaVale McGee, some older guys like that, Dwight Howard, some guys that can come off the bench or be a starting center. And in this league, you don't ask your starting center to play 30, 35 minutes. You're looking for more 15 to 20. On some nights, you're looking for maybe 24 minutes from your big man, just get some rebounds. So I think guys like this can step in and really help. I'm just tired of this team hoarding draft picks for no payout. I think you have to go get proven players that can help you now. And Celtics, I'm doing this to help you in Jason Tatum. I love Jason Tatum, but you're going to waste his best years. You're going to waste him just sitting there in 7th place in the Eastern Conference. And all the guys at the top of the East are like, I want to play Boston round one. I'd love to play them. Give me Boston round one. You do not want to get stuck in exactly. You do not want to get stuck in this purgatory. They become too attached to players in Boston like Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown. Drastic moves have to be taken, and I think a route like this could help them take that step forward. But that's what I think they have to do to try to fix these Boston Celtics. But Jared, what do you think of me? What do you think of my moves that I have planned?
I definitely understand you're wanting to go out and get wings with with ball handling skills. Because if you look at like the last, I don't know how many finals MVPs, they're all small forward, power forward combos. Andre Iguodala, LeBron James, Kevin Durant. I can't believe Andre Iguodala was the first name to pop into my head.
Kawhi Leonard.
All those players, Kawhi Leonard. But all those guys can handle the ball. All those guys can play some defense. All those guys are great. Well, Iguodala not so much anymore. But at the time, all those players were pretty good offensive players. That's just kind of what you need to be a successful team nowadays. Because you can have a great guard nowadays, like say, and I hate to use this example, but a Derrick Rose in his prime. But when was the last time you've seen a Derrick Rose type player go far in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Maybe conference finals. But beyond that, it's dominated by forwards. Like Curry is probably the only exception, but Curry had a great team around him of like wings like Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, Harrison Barnes, Kevin Durant. So that's just kind of what you need. The only thing I have to say about your Celtics build is I want to see him get a playmaker.
Okay.
Maybe sacrifice one of your maybe don't opt for Jeremy Grant or don't opt for Miles Bridges and bring in a player like a dream player for them would be Lonzo Ball, but as the GM, I'm taking over as the GM for the Chicago Bulls in this scenario, especially because we might lose Mark Eversley. We are not negotiating for Lonzo Ball. So sorry, go somewhere else. Find your playmaker elsewhere. We're keeping Lonzo. We like what we have.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think Miles Bridges, you do need a playmaker. The way I kind of look at it is if you're able to get kind of 2 solid point guards where if you're able to pick up both like a Patty Mills and a Patrick Beverly, have kind of Patrick Beverly coming off the bench. Patty Mills is kind of your starter. I understand where you're coming from. You need someone obviously to feed the other guys. I think that's something you probably do have to address. The way that I'm just looking at it is, man, they're stuck in the middle. And I hate to see this because they're not a terrible basketball team. Everybody knows the Boston Celtics, one of the best franchises in the history of the NBA. It's whatever. But to me, it's just kind of they're stuck in purgatory, man. I want to see them kind of either, just make a move or don't. Like, get rid of these star players. Don't waste your guys, or make these moves to try to get better actively. And this is just, to me, it's been a long time coming. I completely understand where you're coming from. You do need some sort of playmaker, and that would be kind of, playmakers are hard to come by, especially in this league right now, because everybody needs them. And once you find one, you do not want to let them go. But yeah, that could be a tough one. But I don't know, man. I just, if I'm Boston and I'm their fans, I'm sick of this every year. Just getting promised, man. Getting promised, hey, this is the year. All of our young guys are finally getting better. Sooner or later, all your young guys are going to be 29, and you haven't done anything. And I would hate to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for that interest in just be ruined by the fact they're just stuck on the Boston Celtics right now with no chance of contention, man. That's just it. And I got a little, heat at the beginning of the this year when I said Boston was out of my playoffs. And right now, that could still happen. I mean, I think they're the 7th seed right now, so they're kind of hanging there towards the bottom. Could definitely still happen. I would love to be right about that, obviously, but we'll kind of see where things go down the stretch. But that's my Boston Celtics rant. I think big things have to be done. These big contracts in Marcus Smart, Al Horford, you got to get them off the books. And if you're going to have big contracts, they got to be guys that produce, man. Got to be guys that produce. And that's the way that this league is trending in the direction of wing guys that could play both sides of the ball. And that's what I want to see him go get. So, oh man, Now the entirety of Boston and all the Boston Celtics fans completely hate me, but that's all right. That's all right, because I'm doing this, like I said, to try to help them. I want to see them get better. Oh, man. But Jarrett, we're going to move on here to our final and our favorite segment on the Team Up podcast, and that is the Team Up. So, Jarrett, who are you teeing up this week, man?
I'm teeing up Bulls Nation that was in United Center a few nights ago against the Warriors.
Okay.
And this is going to be my little soapbox. We are 27-14. When was the last time we were 27-14? We are not 14-27 this season. Hell, we're not 8 and whatever other numbers on the other side of that. We have a good Bulls team. So when you go to the United Center and boo the team that has gotten you to go to the games for the first time in 5 years, shame on you. I get it. It's been a bad stretch. But these guys, they don't need to hear your boos. They know they're not playing well. They don't need it from you because they already know they're getting it from their coach and they're getting it from themselves because they know it's been a rough week. But I mean, that Warriors game, some of it was unexcusable, but losing Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball getting hurt, it was a chaotic game. A lot was going around. No one knew what was happening. But don't go boo the team that revived Bulls Nation. That makes you feel like it's 2011 or 1998 or whatever year it feels like for you. So I'm teeing up Bulls Nation. I haven't been this upset with Chicago Bulls fans at United Center since they booed Derrick Rose on his first night back as a Knick in 2016, which was also screwed up because now y'all love him again because he dropped 50 points. Yeah. But that's another soapbox for another time. Teeing up Bulls.
That's a good one, man. And for me, I got to tee up Devin Booker. And Devin Booker is, you already know where I'm going with this. I think you already know where I'm going with this. Booker's Suns played a game this week in Toronto where no fans were allowed in the stadium due to the COVID pandemic. So while Booker was shooting some free throws, he told the ref he was distracted by the antics of the Raptors mascot that was taking place behind the backboard. The Raptors mascot jumped up and was waving his arms as Booker was shooting to try to distract the Suns star. Booker then told the referee that he didn't like what the Raptor was doing, and the mascot was then asked to move out of the way. Come on, Book. You're better than this. When there's 20,000 fans screaming and waving their arms, you can't tell them to knock it off. You can't tell them to be quiet. The mascot was doing what he could to, one, be a mascot, and that's to make people laugh and make people just enjoy themselves. That's what mascots are for. And he's doing it to try to provide some sort of home court advantage. He's just sitting in the front row. He shoots the free throw. He just jumps up and he tries to do what he can. Oh, it was hilarious, man. It was. And then you just see the Raptor over on the sideline after he's told to move, and he's just got his hands on his hips, and he's just like, I was just doing my job, man. He's just walking around an empty stadium. It was crazy. And what's awesome is that wasn't even the funniest part of that game. And I don't know, a lot of people probably didn't even see this, but the Raptors mascot earlier in the game, in the second quarter, put on a giant blow-up mascot costume and just walked down the first row right in front of where the camera was actually positioned to play the game. And there was literally like a 15-foot tall, just blow up Raptor that just kind of casually walked in front of the camera. And it was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life while the game was going on. And props to the Toronto mascot and technical foul on D Book, because this was a weird one, man. It was one guy. He's waving his arms. You can't shoot it. You made the free throw anyways. You almost missed it, but you made it. Then you're going to tell the Raptor to get out of the way? Come on, D-Book. Come on, man.
I got a text from my friend after all this happened, and the text was like, you consider Devin Booker a superstar? I'm like, maybe. He's like, oh, Devin Booker's the softest superstar of all time.
Yeah, this was ridiculous. This was a bad look for D-Book. There's one mascot in the stadium, and that's it. And he's just there trying to do what he can to make you miss a free throw.
Hey, Raptors mascot, way to show out for Toronto Nation. Way to represent.
Oh, he did. Props to him, man. Props to him. I agree. Oh, man, but that's all we have for you guys this week. Thank you all for joining us on the TM Up podcast. We'll be back next week with another edition as we continue to get closer and closer to that all-star break, deeper into the season, and we'll see how things fold after another week here. So thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.